Hello viewer, and welcome to my video on the Prenatal Development and Infancy Unit. Have you ever just sat there and wondered to yourself, darn, I wish I knew the development of human beings from prenatal to 0 to 2 years, but I just don't understand it. Jeez, no one says that. If you answered yes to this question, then you're in luck, because in this video I will be going over the physical, cognitive, and social-emotional development of prenatal infants as well as babies ranging from years 0 to 2. Amazing, right? Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm going to be serious here. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I don't want to make this too long or the editing will kill me. So let's get right into it. We will start off with physical development. Now, what is physical development, you may ask? Well, physical development is exactly what it sounds like. The development of physical things such as limbs, organs, and nerves. This can also lead into skills such as walking and writing once the baby is out of the womb. Let's start out with prenatal physical development. Prenatal, in case you did not know, means in the womb. See, this is the baby. It's inside the womb. It's not out. It's okay. To help us better understand the development taking place during pregnancy in the womb, we have to look at the 3 trimesters of prenatal development, or the 3 trimesters of pregnancy. During these trimesters, different muscles, bones, body parts, and organs are formed, as well as basic movement skills and senses. I'll go through each trimester now and show you what happens in each. The first trimester, which is weeks 1 to 12 of pregnancy, is the most important to physical development. Like, seriously, if this trimester didn't happen, the pregnancy wouldn't happen, and then there would be no baby, there'd be nothing to talk about, this presentation would be really boring, and we'd just be sitting here. Anyway, after conception, we start our first major development at 4 weeks. At this time, we are no more than the size of a poppy seed, and we look like this? Like, that's terrifying. Inside this little embryo, we have a tiny brain, still growing and not yet functioning. A small, primitive circulatory system, complete with a heart that is just starting to appear. We also see the beginning of intestines, lungs, and a urinary tract. Finally, at the 4-week stage, we see the beginnings of the umbilical cord and placenta, which will later deliver essential nutrients and oxygen to the developing human, I guess you could. Okay. Fast forward to 6 weeks. The fetus now has this giant thing that looks like a hot air balloon attached to his stomach. This is the yolk sac, working hard to help the fetus stay alive. We also see the beginnings of limbs, facial features, and the fetus begins to make its first tiny movements. The last major point in this trimester, number 1, comes at weeks 10 to 14. At this point, your baby has separate fingers and toes. A liver is forming in the place of the deteriorating yolk sac, along with a brand new set of intestines. Woo, yeah! Yeah, that's all the first trimester has to offer us. Let's start with the second, shall we? The second trimester runs from month 4 to month 6 of pregnancy. This stage is often described as the stage where women feel their best, and is often their favorite stage. I mean, I don't know why, it's just what people say. I mean, like... Milestones in the second trimester include the development of the fetus's skeleton with a primitive spine, rib cage, and functioning joints. The fetus's brain is also now starting to function more independently, and the heart pumps blood all on its own. Also, the fetus's movements will start to improve. That's right, in the second trimester the fetus will begin to do thrilling things, such as sucking their thumbs and kicking really freaking hard. Fetuses actually begin to kick as early as 10 weeks, as I previously mentioned, but you won't feel it until around this time. The fetus can now also hear you talking or singing, so don't say any swears, or it will hear it, and that's not very good parenting. Weeks 21 to 27 are the last few in the second trimester. At this time, the baby has developed a sense of touch and has gained the ability to move its mouth in such a way as to smile, and it even gets the hiccups. The baby now has lungs and is even practicing taking its first breaths using its newly formed bronchioles. It doesn't breathe air, obviously, since there's no air inside the womb, but instead takes in some of the fluid and filters out everything he needs in his lungs. He now looks almost exactly like he will when he comes out of the womb, with fully formed lips and eyelids that open to reveal eyes that cannot yet see. but still look the exact same as a fully formed baby, and is now a full 14 inches long. Wham! End of second trimester! Bam! Enter third trimester. This final trimester are months 7 to 9 of pregnancy, and it ends with the birth of the baby. We see the last major changes occur in weeks 28 to 37. At this time, the baby's bones are hardening, becoming the full skeleton they'll be when they exit the womb. The bones in the skull are not yet connected, however, to allow the baby's head to easier exit the womb. The baby's sense of sound and touch are now fully developed. The baby will begin to experiment with things such as grabbing the umbilical cord and feeling and kicking the walls of the womb. He can now also see, slightly, not very well, but he can still see. Often, in the final week of pregnancy, the baby will also flip itself upside down with its head facing the birth canal in order to ready itself for birth. That's all we have to go over in the prenatal section of physical development. Congratulations, we now have a fully developed and born baby. Now it's time to move on to the 0 to 2 year period to see what sort of physical changes go on in that time. I hope you're as excited as I am. Now we have a baby. It's outside of the womb, you see? Yeah, outside the womb. Alright. Lots of physical growth goes on in the first 2 years of a baby's life, so I'm going to run through them for you. Now, there's 3 major parts, or pretty much the basics, of physical development that goes on in these years. Head and body movement, the ability to sit and stand, and mobility. From birth to around 6 months, babies can lie on their backs and then roll onto their stomachs. Pretty hardcore for someone as young as that, eh? I guess they focus all their attention into rolling, however, because they can only sit with support, or by leaning on their hands. As for standing, that's only possible with support as well. Now, babies really ramp up the skill by the 6 to 12 month stage. They're so hardcore now, they can not only roll onto their front and back, but also roll into sitting position. Man, forget Evel Knievel, babies have the market cornered on thrills. Yeah, they can also sit completely unaided at this stage, and even recover if some heartless jerk decides to push them over. They can even crawl or shuffle at this stage, so they could go over and punch said heartless jerk right in the nose if they wanted to. If you ask me, they deserve it. Because, you know, pushing babies, it's just low. By the time we reach 24 months, or 2 years of age, babies have abandoned lying down completely, and are fully comfortable with sitting up. They can also stand and walk with relative ease. Well, that's it for physical development. Wait, no, I forgot risk and resilience. One sec. Now, not even I knew this, but apparently there are a ton of things that are dangerous to a pregnant woman that can hinder the physical development of her baby. Some of these things are obvious, such as taking various drugs or drinking alcohol, but there are others you would not normally even consider to be dangerous, such as herbal tea or electric blankets. There are also several chemicals that are especially dangerous to pregnant women in particular. Specifically, these chemicals are aspartame, saccharin, sorbitol, and mannitol. Don't worry, I don't know what they are either. To explain hindrances to pregnancy, I'm going to use our good old friend aspartame. He's a chemical found in things such as breath mints, instant meals, yogurt, soda, and even cereal. To the everyday person, aspartame is completely harmless, but to pregnant women, aspartame can become a bit more of an issue. You see, too much aspartame in a pregnant woman's system, and the developing fetus is at risk for severe brain damage, as well as mental retardation, a condition that will put a significant dent in the child's physical development in the future. But how would you prevent such awful things from happening? The obvious fix for drugs and alcohol-related problems as well, the no drugs and no alcohol approach. It can be tough for those with addictions, but it's the easiest and most effective method out there. As for chemicals, like our good friend teratogen, another teratogen, I don't know how to pronounce that. Anyway, another type of chemical that causes malformations in developing babies, we have to take a different approach. The woman in pregnancy must ask several questions in order to avoid chemicals. Things like, is my baby susceptible to teratogens? Where could I possibly come into contact with these chemicals? How do I avoid these places? Taking this into consideration and taking the action on them can be extremely helpful in avoiding dangerous substances. Okay, now we're done physical. For real this time. Let's move on to our second stop on this educational roller coaster, bus route, trains, whatever. Let's move on to cognitive development. Cognitive development, otherwise known as brain development and intelligence, covers things such as thoughts, senses, language, and yes, intelligence. Shocker, right? Let's start off by talking about the cognitive development that goes on while the baby is still inside the mother's womb. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, what's wrong with you? How can there be any cognitive development in the womb, man? The baby just sits there and grows yolk sacs and placentas and stuff. Well, you're in for a surprise. Quite a bit of cognitive development can take place. The first and foremost is the formation of the baby's senses. As previously mentioned, the sense of sight is developed at about 7 months into pregnancy, and the sense of touch shows up at around the 8-month period. Hearing is fully picked up at the 8-month period as well. After 9 months, the baby has all of its senses developed fully. Now, call it crazy, call it magic, call it whatever you will, but there are ways that can potentially increase a developing baby's chance of language development and intelligence. In the second trimester, the baby develops a sense of hearing, as we previously covered. Talking to or playing music for your baby can potentially teach them the extremely basic building blocks of intelligence and language. These tactics do not have any crucial long-lasting effects after the baby is born, but research shows that it does help a little bit with the baby's understanding of human communication. That's all for the prenatal in this section. Now for the exciting part, after birth. And no, not the disgusting fluid that comes out after the baby is born. I don't want to talk about that. What can encourage or deny the learning of language and intelligence skills in a baby? How do different actions affect this baby's learning? These are some of the questions that have been asked for years. In order to answer these questions, we need to take a look at some of our good friends, the theorists. Meet Sigmund Freud. He's a pretty famous guy, and he's got some pretty rockin' glasses. Some call him the father of psychology. I call him cool. Seriously, some of this guy's theories are pretty amazing, and were often the basis for other theorists to build theories on the subject. Now, what does Mr. Freud tell us about cognitive development of children? Well, Freud had this nifty little thing called psychosexual stages of development. These stages go all the way to birth to around 16 years of age. The two stages important to this presentation specifically are the two first stages, the oral and anal stages. The oral stage is things such as biting or sucking of thumbs. If a child cannot pass this stage or become comfortable with the actions in this stage, he will develop oral fixation and begin to develop and exploit an oral personality. Children with oral personalities will often become overly dependent on others, become excessively gullible, or develop a passive-aggressive personality, according to Freud. The second stage of Freud's that affects our age group is the anal stage. In this stage, the focus is containing and expelling, well, poop. It's essentially when the child is potty trained. The child must be praised in proper ways for both the restrainment and the expulsion of poop at the proper times. If a child does not make it through this stage successfully, the child could become one of two things. He could either become anal retentive, meaning he's overly clean and a perfectionist, or anal expulsive, which means he is unorganized or messy. Now, Freud is not the only theorist who can help us with this question. Freud teaches us that his stages of development determine how a child's brain functions, but we still have to hear a word from our other friend, Jean Piaget. What is it? Is it whatever. His theory was similar to Freud's in that children go through different stages, and these stages shape how they learn. Piaget's theory essentially tells us that tenderness and lovingness toward a child encourages learning and speech. For example, a mother talking to her child in a heartwarming voice will encourage the child to do the same. Now, yet another theorist, Maria Montessori, I hope I pronounced that right, must have really enjoyed Piaget's theory as she used it for a basis of her own. She has a theory that children learn to use their senses to better understand the world around them. Things like object permanence come into play here. Object permanence is a baby knowing an object still exists even when he or she can't see it, and that children tend to learn better when they enjoy what they are doing. An overly difficult or uninteresting work will discourage learning if presented at an early age. She's basically saying that small children should play while they work, something I wholeheartedly agree with. Just saying. Well, that brings us to a close on cognitive development. It's time to graduate to our final stop, social emotional development. Social emotional development is very closely tied with cognitive, in that it is mental development and involves a child learning. In this case, however, it concerns personality and how we interact with others. As always, I'll start off with prenatal. There is not much in the way of social emotional development at the prenatal stage. However, as previously mentioned, there are ways of bonding with your baby while it is still inside of you. After 23 weeks, when your baby can hear, it's suggested playing music for him, as it has been proven that babies will tend to associate music with comfort after birth. If it's done well, it's also suggested to bond with the baby by talking. To hear the mother's voice in the womb again is comforting to the baby, and when it is born, it will recognize its mother's voice, which will help the baby learn who she is quicker. Yeah, like I said, not much for prenatal here. Time for the infants. Remember our friend Sigmund Freud? Well, he's back with some more theories to teach us about social emotional development, specifically a child's journey to unlocking their personality and socialization abilities. According to Freud, babies are brought into the world with a selfish, constant need called the id. The id only thinks for itself and has no consideration for those around it. That's why babies have zero respect. Scumbag babies, am I right? What? What is that not correct to say? As the child gets older, a more realistic, considerate force seems to take hold. This is called the ego. The ego is formed after the selfish needs of the id cannot all be met the way it wants. As the baby gets older, it begins to discover its family's rules, customs, and status, and where the child in specific stands in that family. The need to meet these family-specific needs and wants is called the superego. Now, unfortunately, this is just a theory, and Freud's theory is not considered to be very accurate today, but again, it was the building block of what was to become the understanding of the development of children. Enter Erik Erikson, a particularly ugly theorist with a pretty darn catchy name. Erikson says that children go through social crises while growing up, and that the outcome of these crises can be good or bad depending on how the caregiver of the child handles it. If a crisis has a positive outcome in one stage, the next stage's crisis will likely be easier to solve. Social development is heavily affected by the attitude of the caregiver. If a caregiver is discouraging or absent-minded towards the child during their first 2 years of their lives, their superego is damaged, which can also cause damage to the ego. This results in the hindrance of social development, and the child may become shy and insecure, and the rest of his or her development socially will slow down substantially. Well, that's it for social emotional development, and that's also it for the entirety of my presentation. Hey, thanks for watching, and maybe even learned something from this. If you didn't, I just at least hope you enjoyed hearing what you already knew. I might make another one of these in the future, but for now, goodbye.